Hello, welcome to the Money Talk. I'm Johnny.
And I am Theresa. And today we have Mr. Scott Maderer with us. He is an expert in helping you find your calling. Thank you so much for joining us today, Scott. And I would like for you to introduce yourself at this time.
Absolutely. So thanks so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here and talk to you and your listeners. So like you said, my name is Scott Maderer, and thank you for pronouncing it right. Not everybody gets it right because it's one of those names that it's great. I'm 50 something years old, and every once in a while someone still looks at me and goes, "Are you sure that's how you say it?" It's like, I've said it my whole life. I think by now I know. I live here in South Texas. I live out in the middle of nowhere, actually, out in the wilds of the country, close to San Antonio, but we're about an hour from the closest Walmart, Starbucks, or McDonald's. So when I say I live out in the country, I really mean it. I live here with my wife. My son lives up in Dallas, and he's an adult, out of the house, not living in our basement. Yay!
Yay!
Yay.
That's a win, right? So I've been a lot of different things in my life. I started my career. I was actually going to go into medical research. I went to college for that, got a couple of science degrees, did all of those things, and figured out real quick that medical research turned out to be a lot of chasing grant money and not a lot of actual research work. And since I really wanted to help people, I kind of pivoted and became a school teacher. So I did that for 16 years. I've taught sixth grade, seventh grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. You'll notice I skipped eighth grade. In Texas, eighth grade is earth science. And I tell everybody I don't do rocks. So I can pretty much teach any other science, but geology and meteorology are a little tough on me. So I'm like, no, I'll skip that one. So I did that for 16 years. Loved teaching, loved the students, loved the work. But anyone that knows a teacher knows it's long hours, it's a lot of hard work, it's emotionally draining. There's a lot, and then on top of it, it's low pay. So I actually left the education field as a teacher, and I went into the corporate world, began to work for a company called Educational Testing Service. In other words, I went from teaching to writing tests. So in the words of my students, I joined the dark side. But in reality, again, it was still about this idea of serving others and helping others, because although there are a lot of ways that tests are used that are negative, tests are also used in a lot of ways that are positive in terms of getting funding and helping people and doing other things. So the company I worked for was a great company. I worked my way up into senior leadership. I worked there for 11 years. At one point, I was running a team. I had about 20 leaders that reported to me, and then through them about another 140, 150 people. So about 180 people kind of reporting up through my line. On a plane all of the time, in hotel rooms all of the time. I tell people I know what a lot of airports and hotel rooms look like, and hotel conference rooms, because that was a big part of my job. 3-4 months out of the year, I was somewhere, not home. That part of it got old. And as I kind of looked at what I was doing, the common things was I really loved the when I was working with students, I loved pouring into the students, not just about the science stuff and the education, but just about their life. And then when I was working in corporate, the client stuff was kind of like, well, it's necessary and I can do it. And it's fun, but the pouring into the leaders and developing the teams and doing all of that stuff, I love. So I started a coaching business on the side, and 2011 began to grow that. And then I kind of reversed my climb up the corporate ladder. So I literally gave them a year's notice in writing and said, y'all need to train my replacement. I'm going to step down from this position in about 6 months. So I'll train my replacement. I'll help them. I'll replace myself, but then I need to work down. So I literally went, back down to a lower position, trained my replacement, then went to part-time, and then left and launched my own coaching business in 2017. And now that's what I do. I work with people. I call myself a stewardship coach. I help people master their time, their talent, and their treasures so that they can live out their calling. I've worked with people in 16 countries all over the world. My commute's a lot better. Instead of an hour and 20 minutes and on a plane, my commute's 30 seconds. I walk from the house next door to an office we built out here on the property, and jump on the internet. I was using Zoom since before Zoom was cool, before everybody, COVID, everybody's like, oh, this Zoom thing. I'm like, yeah, I've been using it for like 2 years. What are y'all talking about? But, it was exciting to see other people open the idea to virtual. It did help, honestly, make people more open to doing business virtually. So it honestly did help my business, as horrible as there were many challenges, it was also good in some ways. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit about me and my wife and myself and kind of how we got here.
So you have a book that you published. Could you tell the audience about your book?
Absolutely. So, on the screen behind me, if you're watching, if you're listening, the book's title is called Inspired Living. The subtitle is Assemble the Puzzle of Your Calling by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures. It comes back to that fundamental idea of, I think for a lot of us, we end up living a life that is not really authentic or inspired to what we're called to do, for what God has put in our hearts is, this is the thing we're really meant to do. And instead, we just kind of go through the motions. And what I found is a lot of people feel like what's holding them back is not having enough time or not having enough money. And those two areas, now I will point out, that's honestly usually the symptom, not the real root problem, but it's the thing we recognize, right? We say that all the time. Oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time to do this. Oh, I don't have the money. Or you got golden handcuffs, right? I got a full-time job, it's paying the bills. I couldn't afford to leave my job, that kind of language around it. And the reality is, what I tell people is, I trick you. You come for help with time or money, and then all we really work on is talent, because at the end of the day, how you handle your time, how you handle your money is all about how you handle yourself. And so the book goes into each of those areas, kind of gives some tips and tricks and things you can do to work through those areas so that you can both identify your call. There's exercises for that in the book. And then if one of these areas is kind of where you're struggling, you can dive in and do some problem solving for that. Basically took a lot of the coaching work that I've been doing over the last 30 plus years, because before I was formally a coach, I was still doing coaching with my leaders and with students and others, and kind of tried to crystallize that down into a book and say, here's the straightforward way that anyone could do it, because the truth is I can't work with everybody. And so it's just a way of putting that puzzle together for folks.
Right.
That was a magnificent idea, because I'm sure you are aware of how challenging it is today for people to figure out what their calling is, because you're caught up in life, you're caught up with the money, and you're caught up with life again. And you just don't even think to take the time to figure out what your calling is.
That's true. You're right.
Yeah, a lot of folks don't take, and you're right, take the time is a great way of phrasing it, because it does take time and energy to stop and sit down and go, I joke and tell people that the question that you want to ask yourself is, what do I want to be when I grow up? But here's the truth, 52, 42, 62, 102, 12, I don't care how old you are, you kind of have to constantly ask that question. Because one thing I've also discovered is, not only do a lot of times we struggle with figuring out what our calling is, it's a puzzle that's changing. It's a dynamic process. It's not like you figure it out once and you're done. It continues to evolve and change. My joke about the subtitle is, it's assembling the puzzle. But the puzzle here is, imagine for a minute, you get the jigsaw puzzle, you pull it out, you dump all the pieces out, you look at the picture on the cover, you start putting the puzzle together, you come back in 6 months and the picture on the box is different. And you look in the box and it's like, wait a minute, there were some corner pieces here last time. Where'd they go? Somebody moves the pieces. And occasionally somebody dumps some pieces in there from somebody else's puzzle, and you're looking at it there going, why do I got extra pieces? Where'd these come from? It's a dynamic process, because both our picture of what our calling is changes, and what we have available to us changes. The pieces in the box as well as the picture on the box change over time.
That's a good explanation.
Yeah, it is. Right. So and I got to know this, because since we were talking about, you brought up the calling, your calling. How would someone identify their calling? Because I think that's very vital, that you're not wasting time, but you're walking in the calling that you're supposed to be walking in. So how do you go about identifying your calling?
Well, the first thing, couple of things to kind of lay as definitional. So first off, calling versus career. So a lot of times we think of our calling as the thing we do to get paid. It's our career, it's our job, it's how we make money. And the truth is, it might be that, it might not be, or at least there's more to it than just what you do. What you do and what you get paid to do, that's your career, that's your assignment, that's your role, words like that. The calling is kind of deeper and bigger than that. It is what you are. The word vocation, literally the same root word as vocal, That word came from calling. Okay. It's
Mhm.
the same, the idea of something higher, something bigger than you. In my case, I believe in God. So I believe in
Mhm.
a calling from God.
Yeah.
If that's
Mhm.
not resonate with you, whatever it is, universe, higher
Mhm.
power, I don't care. Something outside of us, bigger than us, says to us, hey, this is what gives you energy. This is what gives you life. This is what feeds your soul. This is what you're meant to be doing. And again, you may do it in different ways. Look at me as the example. When I was a teacher, what were the parts of teaching that fed my soul? What was pouring into the kids? A lot of the other stuff, there was stuff I had to do just because it's part of the
Mhm.
job. By the
Mhm.
Mhm.
way, live 100% authentically into your calling. There's still going to be some stuff that you're going to have to do just because it's part
Yeah.
of being living, the
Mhm.
laundry still has to get done, that kind of
Right.
thing, right? The
Yeah.
dishes still got to get washed. There's still work that has to be done.
Mhm.
But what happens is there's more and more pieces of it that you go, yeah, but this gives me energy. That happened in the pouring into the students. That happened in the pouring into the other leaders in the corporate job. That happens now in coaching. So it's not that my calling has changed, but the way that it's expressed
Mhm.
in my life has changed. And in fact, it's gotten kind of
Mm.
more and more where, now in my coaching job, I'm doing more of it. There's more
Mhm.
hours of the day that I'm spent in doing the stuff that really feeds my soul and gives me energy and is authentic to who I am and how I'm wired and what I'm good at. My mother jokes and says, Scott, you've been a coach since you were 8. You just didn't call it that, because it was really how I was wired from the very beginning, was in that way of questioning and challenging
Mhm.
and pushing other people. She's like, you were always the guy that, you were never the leader. You all not leader in
Mhm.
terms of being out in front of everybody, but you were
Mhm.
always leading the group kind of from behind. You were always the pushing everybody else to do a little better, to build up a little bit. Well, that's coaching, and it's the same thing. So I was doing that as a kid. I just didn't know it. So it's finding those threads that run through your whole life. So an exercise you can do, I'll give kind of 2 questions real quick that people can do because I like to give something practical. So the first one is looking backwards. This works really good for those of us who are, how shall I say that, more mature than others. So I don't say
Mm.
old, right?
Mhm.
but it can work even if you're younger. The idea is to look backwards, look back at your life, look at all of the different things you've done. And I don't just mean career stuff. I don't just mean
Mhm.
jobs. It can be the time you went to summer camp, whatever, volunteer work, relationships, everything you can think of. And just simply for all of those activities, write down, what are the things I loved about it? What are the things that I found difficult or challenging or didn't like?
Mhm.
And begin to look for patterns. Look for patterns of what are the things that gave you energy and what are the things that took energy away. And what you'll notice is you'll start to notice certain things just show up over and over and
Mhm.
over and over. Those are the areas that, hey, what can I do to live more of that? The other question is a looking forward question. The other activity is a looking forward activity. So I call this the airport question. Again, I was in the corporate world. I spent a lot of time in airports. For some reason, I put this in an airport because, that was a big part of my life. So
Mhm.
imagine for a minute, it's 5 years from today. So it's 5 years in the future. You happen to be walking through an airport and you're running to your plane to catch it. And as you get to the gate, sure enough, those dreaded words come up on the screen: flight delayed.
Oh,
Now you're going to
Oh,
be stuck in
favorite.
the airport. Yeah, we all hate it, but it's a reality of travel. You're going to be stuck in the airport for 3, 4, 5 hours while you're waiting for the plane, because they've canceled
Mhm.
that flight. Okay, great. So you do what anyone does in an airport when you're stuck there for 4 or 5 hours. You go find either a restaurant or a bar where you can grab a drink or grab something to eat. That's what you do. So you go
Mhm.
find a quiet, place where you can do that, and you're looking around. And as you walk into the restaurant, you look up and you happen to see a friend who you haven't seen for 5 years. Turns out they're in the airport too. They've got a layover too. They're there for 3 hours. You're there for 4. So you sit down in a corner booth where it's a little quieter. You each grab a bite to eat. You grab a drink. You sit down, and your friend looks at you. You have lost touch over the last 5 years and says, "Man, how has your life been?" And you answer your friend with, "The last 5 years have been the best 5 years of my life because." Now, your job is to tell me what comes after because. What would have made the next 5 years of your life the best 5 years of your life that you've ever had so far? What would your relationships look like? What would your finances look like? What would your career look like? What would your spiritual walk look like? What would all of the different components of your life, what would they look like? What would be the picture there? And I mean, paint a picture, descriptive word, full sentences, not just bullets, really try to paint a picture. And between those two activities, the looking backwards, you can start to see patterns of things that give you energy. And the looking forward, you can start to see what are the things that you truly wish were in your life. And then between those two, it begins to give you a little bit of focus of, okay, somewhere in there is some of the things that I am called to do, because that's what would make your life the best life ever. That's what would feed your soul more than anything else.
Oh, that is so good. But now this may be obvious to some, but can you tell the audience, like, how can they recognize if they're not actually in their calling?
That is a good question. And, I do think it shows up in two ways. One is you, and the other is others. So the you answer is this. Again, we all have bad days, and we all have activities in our life that we have to do just because it has to get done. And nobody wants to do it, but we're adulting, we have to do it. It's like, I always love that. Every once in a while, it's like somebody says, you're an adult, and I look around for the adult in the room, and it's like, oh wait, you're talking to me. Oh no, darn it. I have to be the adult. But it's like, okay, we all have those days. So I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about if you sit down and you look at the gestalt of your life, you look at the kind of the bigger picture, is your life giving you energy more than it's taking it away? Are there more days where at the end of the day, when you sit down and you write 2 or 3 things that you've been grateful for, and by the way, if you're not doing that, do that every single day. At the end of the day, sit down and just 3 things that you were grateful for today, jot them in a journal, put them in a notes app on your phone, whatever you want to do, but just get in the habit of looking at every day and going, what was good today? Because guess what? If you train yourself to look for it, you'll start finding it. But if you're having more days where that's, what are the 3? Well, I got out of bed, and we all have them. Again, every once in a while, we all have that day. But I'm talking about if there's more of those than there are of the days where you're like, today was a pretty good day. There was some nice stuff that happened. I got to talk to this great couple and jump on a podcast and have an interview. Wow, that was awesome. I got to work with a client over in Dubai, and we got to whatever, you get to look at the things that you did, and there's more of them that you're looking, that are more days that you're looking that you're getting energy than you're draining energy. If you've got more that are draining, that's an indicator that you're probably not yet living fully into your calling. Okay? The second indicator is the voice of others. Now, in my case, this shows up in the voice of my lovely wife, because my wife often speaks prophetically to me. She often gets messages from God quicker than I do, because I'm a little stubborn. And I'm testify, right? My wife calls it testosterone poisoning.
I agree with her.
Yeah, it's a disease. It's well known. Many men suffer from it.
Right.
And so those people in your life, and I'm talking about the people like your wife, your child, your parent, people that know you well, your dearest, bestest friend, the people that really can speak truth into your life. Listening to them, because a lot of times they'll see things before you see them. And if they're looking at you and going, there's some stuff missing in your life, you got to change something, man. This isn't good. You're not going the direction you need to be going. You're not doing what you need to be doing. There's more here for you. If they're speaking that truth into your life, there's a pretty good odds that there's some truth being spoken to you, and you need to start listening and trying to dig in a little deeper to figure out what is missing. What are the things that I'm leaving out?
Okay, so that's a great explanation. I appreciate that. Thanks, Scott.
Yes, and Scott, and I'm gonna hop around a little bit, because I know you had times, talent, and treasure, right? That's the three things that you said you kind of focus on. So my next question to you is this: what is the best way to manage like your personal finances? If you was talking to somebody, what would that be?
So, like always, there's 2 sides to it. One is what I would call tactical or practical side. And then the other is the emotional side. And by the way, this is the same thing with time. They're just different, different activities, but the same 2 buckets. Because the emotional side always comes down to really the talent bucket. Again, one of the things I tell people is, at the end of the day, when you think about not having enough time or not having enough money, it's really not a time or money problem. It's a me problem. Cool thing is you're both the problem and the solution. How you handle your time and how you handle your money is all about how you handle yourself.
Right.
So in either case, the practical tips are putting things in place that help you manage not the money, but manage yourself better around the money. So it's the money is the result, it's the effect, not the cause, if that makes sense. It's getting clear first on what really is important to you. What are your values? I always tell people, if you're developing like a spending plan, a budget, those sorts of things, we always look at those in terms of what are we saying no to? What are we need to cut this out of my budget. You hear that kind of language. I'm like, no, you're looking at it backwards. What do you get to say yes to? Put things in your budget that you want to say yes to first. And then when you get to some of that other stuff, it's like, oh, well, that's not actually that important to me after all. That's easy to say no, because I've built the things into it that are the most important, the things that I actually prioritize, that I actually value. The trick is most of us don't actually spend the time to figure out what and why are things important to us.
That's right. Yeah.
We buy a house because somebody told us it's smart to buy a house.
Right.
That's right.
We spend to go out to eat because, we're kind of bored and lazy and tired. It's been a long day. And so we'll go out to eat. You're not actually thinking about, wait, is going out to eat tonight actually getting me closer to what I want in terms of a bigger why, a bigger value? Not that going out to eat is good or bad. It's not a value statement. It's just is it aligned? Is it in tune? So yeah, I have tools and tips and techniques like, spending plans and cash envelopes and this and that and the other things. But all of those are just the tactical, tool. The truth is, if you don't get in touch with the deeper priorities and values and align your life with those, the tool's not going to work anyway. Because you'll work to get out of debt, let's say, and then you'll go right back into it because you didn't actually change the fundamental underlying belief and why and core decision making. And so guess what? You'll slip right back into bad habits and you'll go right back to where you started from. This is the people that get a HELOC, they pay off all their credit cards, then they end up back with a HELOC and all the credit cards back maxed out, because they didn't change anything in their behavior. They were looking for the quick fix. The real fix to your money is to do the hard work of diving in and figuring out, what do you need to put around you to live your life and put your money in authentic alignment with.
Okay. Yeah. And what I want to say to you, Scott, like
good.
we've only been doing this interview a few minutes and your message has like deeply impacted me.
Oh, well, thank you.
And it has. And I'm not sure if you are aware of how deep your message is and how much it is needed.
Yes.
And so I'm hoping, which I truly have faith and I believe that there's going to be, even if it's just one person that's hearing your message and how powerful your message is, they want to make a change in their life. Like they're miserable in their career and they want to transition out to do something that they love. Can you tell us how to transition from what we're currently doing to doing something that we're called to do that we love?
Yes.
That is so true. There's so many of us that get stuck in that in between, right? Where it's we're doing the thing, we're being the responsible adult, we're going to work, we're paying the bills, we're paying the mortgage, keeping the family fed, keeping clothes and shoes on the kids. We're doing all the stuff and we're doing it right. And yet we know that there's something else we're supposed to be doing and we need to go that direction, but we kind of feel stuck and torn and in between. And honestly, those are the folks that I love to work with more than pretty much anything else, because that's kind of exactly where I was. I was in the corporate world where I was highly compensated, kind of employee. I'm up in senior leadership, running a big team. Everyone from outside looking in is like, dude, you got the dream job. This is awesome. And I'm going, yeah, but it's and I loved it, but it wasn't everything I was meant to be doing either. I've actually been blessed. I've never really left a job I hated to go to a job I loved. I've always left something I loved to go to something I loved more, if that makes sense, which is a blessing. I mean, truly, that is a blessing, But the point is, if you're in that transition phase, you do want to look at where you want to go. You've got to have an idea of what the destination is. Now, let me give you a little trick. Number one, you will not, whatever you think it's going to look like, it's not actually going to look like that. Let me just dissuade you of that right up front. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of the destination is not going to look like the picture you have at the beginning of the journey. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like you see mountains off in the distance and you're like, I want to go visit those mountains. And you've kind of got a picture in your head of what the mountain's going to look like when you get there. But as
Mm-hmm.
you get closer, it's like, let's look at a little oh, that's actually two mountains. There's a smaller
Mm-hmm.
one in front of a bigger one, and then you get a little closer. It's like, oh, wait a minute, there's also some hills here. And there's, you get a clearer picture as you
Mm-hmm.
get moving. You've
Mm-hmm.
got to take action. So begin to make the transition. I am not a big believer in jump off the cliff and build your wings on the way down. I'm a planner.
Me
I'm a little conservative.
Yeah.
I like to have things in place and have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, it's about putting things in again, alignment. It's about saying, okay, how can I do a little bit more of the thing I'm supposed to be doing? Do I need to start something on the side and let it start growing, kind of like what I
Mm-hmm.
did? Is this a situation where, no, this is so toxic, I just got to leave? Okay, great. Then what can I do to leave in a way that I can still do what I need to do?
Right.
Obviously, depending on where you are in your life, this looks very different.
Mm-hmm.
If you're single, no kids, no mortgage, whatever, little bit more freedom and flexibility than, married, two kids,
Mm-hmm.
mortgage, all of that. But in
Mm-hmm.
either situation, the idea is looking at where you're at, looking at where you want to go, and then beginning to figure out, how can I bridge from one to the other
Mm-hmm.
in a way that still provides for the things that I truly feel, are authentically important to me. And,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, that includes things like food, shelter, and utilities and those sorts of things. But it also includes other things other than just that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. I've seen people sometimes trapped in a mindset of, like, for instance, there was a couple I knew. Now, this isn't a job transition, but it's a life transition. So it's the same sort of thinking, where they wanted to travel. And they kept thinking, we're going to put money into retirement. When we retire, we're going to travel. We're going to travel. We're going to travel when we retire. We're going to do it when we retire. Eventually we're going to want to downsize our house and we're just going to buy an RV and then we're going to travel around. And they both had careers where they actually didn't need to be physically in one place.
Mm-hmm.
The kids were all moved out. They have a great big house. But in their mind, they needed to pay off the house. Then they would sell the house. Then they would retire. And then they would buy the RV and travel. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, why don't you skip some of those steps? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, why don't you sell the house, buy the RV, travel now while you're healthy and can enjoy it and everything? And then when you come back, buy a smaller house, because you don't need the big house anyway. And they're like, we've never thought of that. And it was just because they never sat down to say, wait a minute, what are the things that are actually important to us? Travel was a important life value for them, but they hadn't ever sat down to think, well, but is there a way I can get that life value today, as opposed to always deferring and delaying it for the future? Again, delayed gratification is a powerful, powerful wealth building tool. It's a powerful, powerful time building tool. It's a
Mm-hmm.
powerful, powerful life tool. But there's also something to be said for looking at your life and going, yeah, but what do I actually need to delay because it's giving me power? And what can I put into my life now that gives me that energy and those things that I value? Because a lot of times you can get some of what you want, maybe not all of what you want, but a
Mm-hmm.
bigger piece of what you want than you
Mhm.
think, if you'll really sit down and examine it.
Wow.
That's good.
Just
That's
oof.
good.
So yeah, that's really good. And I really like all of those because you're right. Sometimes we don't really consider how we can like change our life to fit the puzzle that we're trying to put together. So
Mm-hmm.
that was really good. So with that, and I know again I go back to money. All money ties into everything sometimes that we kind of do. So why do you think people have like more a month than the money? What do you think about that?
So a lot of times, again, it comes back to alignment and it comes back to saying yes to the right things.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Obviously, there are people that are struggling because of income.
Mm-hmm.
right.
And obviously there are people that are struggling because of outgo,
Mm-hmm.
and the truth is, at the end of the day, that's really the only two sides of the math equation.
Mm-hmm.
There's how much you got coming in and how much you got going out. And the idea is, and people are going to listen to this and go, boy, this coach is brilliant. The idea is live on less than you make and do something smart with the difference.
Oh,
Right.
That-
It's insightful and brilliant, but it really is that simple. the problem is it's simple to understand. It's hard to execute. It's
Oh,
hard to
yeah.
actually do. It's not
Yes.
understanding it. I mean, every single person here can do a budget. It's sixth grade math. You write how much you make at the top and you start subtracting, and eventually, guess what? You run out of money. By the way, that's true no matter how much you make, because a lot of times we just focus on the income side. We think if I could just make $10,000 more a year, it'll fix my problem. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple of numbers. I have had clients that make $37,000 a year, single mom, 2 kids. Okay. She got out of debt. She, put life goals together. She went back to school. She got a much better job and actually makes a lot more money now. But she did all of that while she was making what anybody with any modicum of sense realizes is not a great big income. Well, how did she do that? She sat down and she said, what's really important to me? What are the things I really most need to do? What are the things that I need to say yes to? And I'm going to say no to everything else. And I mean, she didn't go on vacation for a long time. She didn't have cable TV, she didn't have she cut a lot of stuff out of it. The car she drove for a while was not the best car, that kind of thing, but it got her from point A to point B, and it got her where she needed to go. And she drives a much nicer car now.
Yeah.
I've also seen somebody that makes $250,000 a year, not nearly as much debt, not nearly as much overhead or anything else, but then they weren't willing to change what they were doing. And because of that, they just kept getting the same thing they were getting. And they ended up losing a house. They ended up losing, other things, because guess what? They ran up debt. They, kept spending more than they made. The trend is going negative instead of, the feedback loop goes negative. And then when something did go wrong, because guess what? Inevitably something will go wrong. I can't tell you what you're going to have, but I can tell you you're going to have something. I can't tell you when, and I can't tell you what, but I can guarantee you it's going to happen.
Oh yeah, that's life.
That's just what happened. And so now all of a sudden that house of cards falls in on itself and the person's stuck, and they lose things, and they end up having to go through that and rebuild hopefully from that place. The difference wasn't one made 250 and one made 37. The difference is, what were they willing to say to themselves and change in terms of their behavior so that they could actually put things in alignment and get the things that were most important to them. It's amazing to me, because we always think of it as an income thing, but it's ratios. Right. I've had a client that made $200,000 a month. I didn't say a year. I said a month. Okay. And he'd been making that for about 5 years.
Oh, he had a lot
for
of money.
him. He had a lot of money and investments and multiple houses and all that. For him, it was a legit conversation. Should I keep chartering flights everywhere I go, or should I buy a plane and hire a full-time pilot? That's a legit conversation for him. He can, I mean, honestly, if you looked at ratios and proportions, if you make $100,000 a year, him buying a plane was roughly comparable to you buying like a $7,000 car.
Wow.
Okay. That wasn't, what I mean? Not that big of a, I mean, you write a check. It's not a big deal. Right. So, but you notice what happens is the conversation is the same. Where do I need to put my money? What's the opportunity cost? Do I buy a car? Do I buy a $7,000 car? Or do I, buy a $36,000 car? Or do I buy a $700 car? Same conversation, different zeros, but a different number of zeros. Same conversation, same thought process. By the way, he ended up chartering flights because he thought ended up being stupid to own a plane that he didn't use that often. But all of his friends, guess what? They own planes, because it was kind of a status symbol to own your plane and have the pilot. He's like, yeah, I can live without the status symbol. I'll just keep chartering flights, Now, I don't know about you. I don't normally routinely charter flights. That's not something I do.
Yeah, we don't either. Yes. Yeah, that's how I charter flight. Yeah.
Exactly. My flight is coach. That's my flight. Occasionally business class. Maybe. That's it. But again, it's a legit conversation for him because it really wasn't that big of a deal to decide whether he wanted to buy a plane. The point is, it wasn't the income that changes. It's him thinking about, what is an alignment for what I need? Owning this plane. Well, look at how much it cost me and look at how much I actually use it. That's not really that important to me. Right. The only reason I'd end up buying it is because my friends are all like, oh, dude, cool plane. And he's like, I really kind of don't care if they think I have a cool plane. I'm okay with, same thing. Think about it. That's the same conversation that we have with people of, oh, wow, I just bought a new car. They didn't really buy it, but they financed it, and they're leasing it. And it's like, it's a cool car. Yeah, but are you buying that car because it's the right car for you? Or are you buying that car to impress the person next to you at the red light?
Oh, that's good.
Because if you're buying the car to impress the person at the red light, number one, they're really just impressed for a few seconds.
Yep.
And then they move on with their day and they've forgotten all about you. And number
Right.
two, it's not getting you what you really want. Because I'd be willing to bet you money that there's not really that many people listening to us right now where it's like, oh, yes, I live my entire life to impress the people at the red light. That's probably not really what's your deeper drive for what you're meant to do.
Right, right. Well, Scott, just say we have this, some of the younger generation, they are achievers and they're goal seekers and they're just chasing the dollar. They're miserable, but they're making a good money. They're focusing on their retirement. They're focusing on impressing the person at the red light. They're hearing what you're saying and they're miserable in their jobs, but they don't quite know how to stop it. I mean, I'm sure you've coached people who they're so busy chasing the dollar until they forget about their lives and their family. What kind of advice do you have for them spiritually, mentally? What can you tell someone in this situation?
So I really got two words that it's stop it. That's really the advice.
All right.
I'll give you a reference. So if anybody and younger folks, you are going to have to Google this. Okay, Google Bob Newhart. Okay, there used to be a TV show called the Bob Newhart Show. He played this character who's a psychologist. Well, there's actually a Bob Newhart YouTube video called Stop It. Okay, and this woman comes in to his office. He's a psychologist, and she's explaining, he charges her $5 to give her therapy, and so she explains this big fear that he has, and he goes, okay, stop it. That's it. That's his advice, and it's like, that is honestly the advice. Stop it. If you're living in a way that isn't authentic to who you are and how you're supposed to be, and that, stop it. Now, again, we're back to that. It's real easy to say, that's real hard to do because you've got a lot of inertia built up. It's like anything else when you're talking about changing habits. That's what it is. It's a habit. It is, no offense, but it's a habit to go to work 9 to 5 every day. But, by the way, that's not saying it's a good or bad thing. Notice I didn't put a value word in there. It's a habit. Okay. Right. You're the one that has to look at that and go, yeah, but is this a good habit? Is this moving me in the direction I want to go? Because there are times that, right now, I'm just doing the time. My job is to, I'm not working in the job I want to work in the rest of my life. I know it's not authentic to my calling, but right now I need to do some time. I need to do almost like sounds like you're going to prison, but you got to put in some time and some effort to get some experience, earn some stripes to get to the place that you really want to go. And sorry, that's the truth. It's a hard truth. I don't like it any more than anyone else does, but it is true. But at the same time, there's also times where the only reason you're still going to the 9 to 5 is because you've always gone to the 9 to 5 and you're worried about security and safety. Remind yourself of this. If you work a 9 to 5 W-2 kind of job, you're self-employed with one client. Because if that company shuts down, you just lost your only client. You're unemployed. Okay.
Whoever looked at it that way.
Versus being I'm self-employed and I got like 22 clients right now. Now, granted, I don't want to lose any of them, but if one of them goes, okay, I'll get another one. It's not that big of a deal. So but we confuse predictability and routine with stability and safety.
Oh,
they aren't the same thing.
That's good. Say that one more time, Scott.
We're confusing predictability and reliability with stability and safety. We're looking at things predictable, right? Friday, money shows up in my account. I got a W-2. It's directed, boop, there. Yay, it's there. It's predictable. It just shows up. It's reliable. It's going to be there on Friday. In fact, if it's not there on Friday, you're freaking out and on the phone with HR going, what happened? What went wrong?
That's true.
But the versus stability is, have you actually put the things in place that mean, when that emergency happens that we were talking about earlier, because it's going to happen.
That's going to happen.
There isn't a house of cards to fall in. You've built your house on rock, right? You've got the firm foundation. We're back to biblical principles, that we've built a firm foundation that we can build from. And so, we've got our spiritual life in order. We've got our financial life in order. We've got our relational life in order. Well, now, when the emergency comes, you've got that emergency. My joke, from a money perspective, but this works in all components of your life. One of the reasons that having an emergency fund, by definition, cuts your emergencies in half. And people are like, how can having money in the bank cut my emergencies in half? And it's real simple. If you have no money and the transmission falls out of your car, you have a car emergency and you got a money emergency because you got to figure out how to pay for the transmission. If you've got the money to pay for the transmission, you still got a car emergency. Money emergency went away. And it's all of a sudden you've cut your emergencies in half. Same thing happens with our time. Have you built things into your life from a time perspective, health perspective? Are you eating well? Are you sleeping enough? Are you doing the things you need to put margin in your life so that when that stuff goes wrong, you can navigate through it and continue to move forward? That's the difference between doing it just because I get paid, because it puts food on the table, because I have to do it, because mama and daddy told me. If you're young enough, or if your mom and dad are still living, that's still true no matter how old you are. Mommy and daddy told me, I still do what mama tells me, but that kind of thing, right? Or are you doing it because it's actually in alignment and getting you moving the direction that you want to go? That you could actually be doing the exact same job, doing the exact same function, and either of those could be a true statement. You could be working the same job and you're just doing it because it's habit and you kind of feel like you have to do it. Or you could be doing the job and going, yep, this isn't where I'm going to be. I need to do this for now, but this isn't my forever. I'm passing through. I'm doing this strategically because I want to get to there, and to get from where I am to where I want to go. Well, I got to do some stuff in between. That's not necessarily my dream thing, but it's moving me the right direction. So it's a difference of appearance.
It is. It's almost like God's preparing you for your next assignment.
Absolutely. And I firmly believe that God puts things in our path often that, we connect the dots in reverse is what I call it. Looking back, I can say that's why one of those activities I gave you at the beginning was looking back. Looking back, I can go, oh, wow. Yeah. When I did that, that's the piece of my, oh yeah. When I did that, that's, oh yeah, this piece. Oh, look, that prepared me to do this, because guess what? I use skills when I was a manager and a leader of other people. There were skills I used from the classroom all the time. Now, were they the skills necessarily that, were the day-to-day skills of the class? No, but there were skills I learned as a teacher, but I didn't know I was learning skills as a teacher to make me a better leader, to make me a better coach while I was teaching. It's only looking backwards that I realized that, oh, God was actually preparing me for where I was going, not where I'm at.
I really do want to know what the answer is, what he has for that.
Well, let's go. Well, Scott, another. I think this is one of the things that we would really love to know, because in the audience, because a lot of times, I think, in my own opinion, is that we get caught up in this a lot, where we want people to kind of know this answer to this, because I think it'll help other people in the audience, the listeners. So this is it. Why do people never find the time to do the things that are important to them? Why is that?
Because they fill their calendar with things that aren't important to them. I mean, again, I love interviews because I give such simplistic answers and everyone goes, oh yeah, that's brilliant. And then they go, wait a minute. Because it's true. I mean, and again, guess what? Part of my job as a coach is to tell you what you already knew. Because honestly, it's usually not that I'm telling you anything that's anything that you didn't know. You know that's true. I mean, people tell you that all the time. I'm busy. We say things like I'm busy, like it's a badge of honor, right? We hold that up like that's a cool thing. I'm busy. Why is that something to be proud of? Because busy simply means you're doing a lot.
Right.
Doesn't actually mean you're doing anything of meaning. You're
talking to me.
the word for doing things that matter is productive.
Okay.
Productive. I like that.
Can you honestly look at your friend when they go, hey man, hey Johnny, how's it been going? And instead of saying, I've been busy, say I've been productive.
I like that.
And if that's not true, you need to make it true. So I'll give you a quick here's a quick fix. Pretty simple. When you're looking to put something on your calendar, looking to put something that you want to do, and you find yourself thinking to yourself, I don't have time for that. Simply change your language. Here's a reframe. Instead of saying, I don't have time for that, say, that's not a priority.
I like that.
Because here's the interesting thing. Change your language and you'll change what you do. Let me give you an example. I don't have time to go to work today versus it's not a priority for me to go to work today. Well, when I say I don't have, or I'll give you another one. I don't have time to go to my daughter's soccer game. That almost sounds like people will look at you and go, oh man, poor you. You know, you're so busy. You don't have time to go to your daughter's soccer game. Pat, 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 oh, poor you. But if you said out loud, it is not a priority for me to go to my daughter's soccer game. What would your friends tell you?
How horrible you are.
That's totally different.
All of a sudden, you're a jerk. All of a sudden, it's like, dude, really? You don't have time to go to your daughter's soccer. Make time.
Yes.
Right. And if you're saying that out loud to yourself, all of a sudden you'll go, well, what was I going to go do instead of go to my daughter's? I was going to stay an extra couple of hours at the office. Well, maybe I can figure out another way to get those two things done before the end of the day so I can actually take off and go to my daughter's soccer game. It's about looking at what you're filling your time with and saying, are these actually the things that are priorities?
Well, Scott, do you have any teachers on this?
Huh?
Do you have any teachers on what you're discussing now, like how we need to change our language?
Absolutely.
Where can we find it?
So some of these are actually in the book, Inspired Living. I actually have some free resources that I put together as well that includes some of these tips like this. And then, of course, this is also the things I do with my clients in coaching. So I actually put together a page just for your listeners. If they go to inspiredstewardship.com/money talk, that has on there some free tips, some quick and easy wins in the areas of time, talent, and treasure. There's actually a place on there that you could set up a 30-minute call with me. So if you've got questions, if you need some help, jump into that. The book is on that page as well. There's my podcast, a couple of other things, how to follow me and those sorts of things. By the way, the only thing on that page that costs you any money is the book. And that's available for pre-sale now. And I'd love for anybody that's interested. But most of these exercises I've been sharing are in the book or in those free tips or both. Some of them are in one place or the other or both places. And again, you can certainly avail yourself of the free stuff. If you can't afford the book right now, jump on the free things or jump on a 30-minute call, and I'd be more than happy to share that. Then I'm actually going to have downloads and things once the book goes live in July of some of these exercises so folks can go get them for free and just download them. Because the whole point is all of this is stuff that really and truly anyone can do. It's just about sitting back and having that intentionality of doing it on purpose rather than living your life by accident.
I like that. Scott, I want to thank you for just an outstanding discussion here today, because a lot of the information that you have provided, really, if the audience sat down and just listen, it can really impact their lives. I mean, honestly, it's impacted us just by having this discussion with you today. So I want to thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.
This has been great. So thank you, Scott. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I hope the listeners got some value. And by all means, anything I can ever do to help any of you or help the two of you, I'd be happy and honored.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for joining us. This has been powerful, eye-opening. Like I'm thinking, I need to learn how to talk myself. So we will provide the resources that you have for the listeners, and you will probably just get some calls. And the book is going to go live July. Do you have the dates in July?
July 2nd.
Okay. Will it be
2024? It's available for pre-sale now, but it actually goes live. And if you buy a hard copy of it or the paperback version of it, there's actually a code in the book where you can get the electronic version for free.
Wonderful. Okay. So I'm sure it'll be available on Amazon. Is that correct?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all places that pretty much anywhere you can get a book right now, it's available for pre-sale, and then it'll go live July 2nd is when they'll start shipping.
Okay. All righty. Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining the Money Talk, and we look forward to speaking with you again in the future. Thank you again. Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye. Hello, friends. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, you had to enjoy that interview. If you are in the process of wanting to make a leap and go out and work in your calling versus working in your career, I recommend that you purchase this book when it comes out July the 2nd.
Yes.
There are so many people that's working in jobs that they're miserable in. There are so many people working jobs that they're chasing money and they are so miserable. Don't spend your life being miserable. Figure out what your calling is and also figure out what's not important. Some things are just not important. Change your language, buy his book, and figure out what it is you need to do so that you can truly walk in your calling. And what we've learned over the years, if you do what you love, the money will what?
Come.
Right.
It
So
will come.
again, figure out what it is you need to do, that you're called to do.
Yes.
Do the work, do it to your best ability, and you automatically will because it's a job that you love.
Yes.
The money will come. So we would like to say thank you so much for joining the Money Talk, and we will see you the next